from Meltwater, and Stina's here. And I'm going to just leave it at Stina since I'm busy messing up names. Stina's up here to ask him questions. Please give a warm welcome to Jørn and Stine.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction. I think it was a little short. We start out saying the name right, maybe?
Pretty good.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and one of the first things that is awakening my curiosity is, so you're the CEO of Meltwater, and that's a quite big thing. But besides being the CEO of a huge company, who are you?
Yeah, so is it working? Yeah. So my name is Jørn Lyseggen. I'm Norwegian. So usually when I have meetings in the US and people expect a tall, blonde, dashing guy, and all they end up with me. But I was born in Korea. I was raised in Norway. I was actually raised in a small little village called Trysil. So some of you might have been there skiing. So that's where I'm kicking around until I started school. I took an engineering degree. My first job was actually as a research scientist at the Norwegian Computing Center, which is one of the better research institutes in Norway.
Very good. So I guess the story is 2001 in Oslo, you founded Meltwater. 2005, you went to Silicon Valley, which is quite early, considering today where people are sort of much aware of Silicon Valley, so you were probably going quite fast at that time. 2018, it's a huge company, thousands of employees. You were present in 60 markets and things. How did that happen?
Yeah.
in the short version.
Yeah, so we started out in Norway in 2001. We were a very humble beginning. We were two guys in a coffee machine, and we started a company with $15,000, which is basically what you need to incorporate a company. So initially when we started, the aspiration was to create the world's smallest software company. We want to be 4 engineers and then outsource all the sales to a couple of resellers. So we poured our heart into the product, and after a year or so after, we signed up a couple of resellers which presented our product to 1,500 companies, which is a lot, particularly in Norway.
1,500?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
But the result was kind of devastating because we got 1,499 no's. So that was like a kick in the teeth. And then we were starting to wonder, maybe we were completely off. And maybe I should backtrack a little bit. So the reason why we started a company was that we looked at all the information that was published on the internet. And we concluded it was very, very hard to keep track of all that information, at least manually, which was the case at the time. So this was before Facebook, before Twitter, before Google Alerts. So this was very, very early. So our conclusion was that maybe what would be really helpful is if you have a piece of software that can automatically monitor and track all that information. Mm. So, but since we got 1,499 no's, that was kind of less encouraging than we expected.
Yeah.
But I guess the key takeaway after studying all the data was really that we focused too much on technology. We were so excited about our technology and product, but focused too little on the client. So after internalizing that, we concluded that we have to do this completely different. So I hired a couple of salespeople that I worked with before, and then I told them that the product has 0 value until you empathize with the client. So they were not allowed to talk about the product. They were not allowed to talk about the technology until they understood the pain points of the client. And funnily enough, without changing the product, without changing the pricing, only changing the way we sold the product, it was like turning on the light switch.
Oh,
so
wow.
Suddenly we were generating lots of business, and we realized we had something exciting on our hand.
Interesting. Very good. And on that journey, what would you say was the biggest mistake that you made?
Well,
some of them. I hope you made a lot.
Yeah, so one thing that we realized was that number one, I'm an engineer, but I had to walk away from all my technical pride initially, right?
I guess a lot of people here can relate to those.
Yeah, so I had to walk away from all my technical pride and primarily focus on the client. So that was one big hurdle. And so, okay, we had this great product, but we understand that it was all about the sales and go-to-market strategy. Then the question is, how do you build a business? And there are lots of mistakes we did along the way, but the biggest realization is actually that the most important product that you create is the company culture and your company's ability to attract, train, and develop future leaders.
And I think it's something that at least startups with a very few people actually forget, because it's easy to forget when you're only 5 people. Then you don't spend time on culture and values and attracting people. You focus on the product, right? Which is obvious in some way. So going with the idea of that the people and the employees and the culture is the product. How do you do that?
So I think a lot of people talk about culture, and I think everyone realizes that culture is important, but it's very hard to really define. What is culture? I remember back in engineering school, I didn't have so much business classes, but I remember I had one business class where a professor came in, talked about company culture. And to me, it was so vague, and it was hard for me to really relate
Especially
to.
for an engineer and
Exactly.
coming from that background.
But one thing that I definitely realized, the more I work with teams, the more I work with building organizations, and Meltwater is my 4th startup, the more I work with building companies, the more humble I become to the importance of culture. And one way to think about culture, I think, is that every team, every organization, every company has a company culture. And either intentionally or unintentionally. And a culture can be on one side, if it's very good, very nurturing, very motivating. People feel acknowledged for what they do. People feel that they do something exciting. Maybe they feel they are part of something that is bigger than themselves. On the other side, if the culture is really negative, then the culture is toxic. People don't want to collaborate. People don't feel respected. They don't feel like they're working with something that is important, and it's very, very demoralizing. So if you think about culture from that perspective, either it's super motivating and you get the most out of people, or it's really demotivating and brings out the worst in people. So you can imagine the difference.
And putting that in perspective to more than around 2,000 employees?
Today we have, north of 2,000 employees.
Yeah. How does that transcend into all of your employees?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing that you do, and I look at my job today really as primarily 2 things. One is working on culture, and 2 is to try to change and challenge the way we are operating as a business.
Yeah.
Because the day-to-day in the business now is going pretty well. I don't need to be so involved in that.
No. Okay. And going to a little bit more of the challenge that you face today. So what are the main challenges when you're being into new emerging technologies, finding the right people? What would you say as a CEO would be the main challenges that you have today?
The biggest challenge is related to culture. But I think culture is really, culture is very linked to your leaders. So when I say I work about culture, a big part of it is who you fire, who you hire, who you promote, who you don't promote, and how you prioritize. In Meltwater, we have a shorthand for culture, which basically is what you do, what you say, and how you treat people. But the culture, I think, is set to a large extent with the leadership that you have, and to constantly develop leadership that is able to grow with the different phases of the company, including myself, of course. That's a bigger challenge.
Yeah. How do you grow yourself?
Yeah, that has also been a journey for sure. So I remember in the early days, my phone was ringing so much. I had to change my ringtone every second month, because every time my phone was ringing, I got like a Pavlovian reaction, because I knew something was going wrong, right? But over the years, I was just forced to take more and more step out of the operational. So today, for example, if my phone is ringing 4 times, That's actually
That's quite.
a lot. But yeah, that has definitely been a journey.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I'd like to speak a little bit about how you look at success. So as a CEO and being the one that is going forward in terms of leadership and company culture and things, what is success to you and from your personal perspective?
What is
Success to you as being the one that's going forward, and how would you see, what is success in terms of Meltwater? When are you doing good?
Yeah, there are many different ways to look at it. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that in Meltwater we now have 100 people that have been in the company for 10 years or more.
Oh, wow.
And the average age in the company is 27, so it's we mostly hire millennials. And a lot of people talk about millennials being not so loyal, not so hardworking, entitled. I don't agree with that. I have really good experience with that all over the world.
Yeah.
So so that is that's something I'm proud of, and I'm still proud of that we have, offices all over the world. And I still like to think that we have a pretty consistent culture across the world, and I like to think that we are still entrepreneurial.
Yeah. You see yourself still as an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Very good. And in terms of success and setting goals, can you maybe tell a goal that you put forward but you did not accomplish?
Yeah.
If you want to answer that.
Yeah. So goals. So this may sound a little strange, but I've never been that big on specific goals or objectives. I mean, originally our vision was to become a global business and be the leader in our industry, but there was very little specific goals in the process. I think it's really hard to predict 1 year into the future, 2 years into the future. So of course you want an overall objective, but I think for me it's more about continually working on what you have and constantly trying to optimize compared to where your overall bearing point. And I think I focus more on bearing points than goals overall as a business.
Yeah, and I won't object to that. So last year you published a book. Maybe you can just tell a little bit more about that, but I would like to hear, was that a good idea? Was it a good idea to publish a book, and why?
Yeah, so I never aspired to write a book. But I've been working this business for so many years, and I have seen how underutilized the information that's available on the internet is, and how much value it would add to companies and decision makers if they did use it. So for that reason, I decided that I should write it. I expected a book in this area to come, but nobody wrote it, so then I decided maybe I should write it. But
it's a good way to start.
But also one of the motivation was that I heard that CRM was established as a software category by Tom Siebel when he wrote a book. And I thought that was very interesting, because I deeply believe that companies need to move from introvert to extrovert. Companies today are very focused on their internal data. When they make decisions, when they make assessments, mostly about internal data. Cash, churn, ARR development, year-over-year growth, and so on. Whereas I believe that one of the most important and valuable source for insight is from external data. Internal data is mostly lagging data and information about yourself. External data is forward-looking data, and it's about all that happens in your marketplace. Competitors, clients, and other factors. So if you can make decisions on all the external factors, which are forward-looking, you can anticipate changes to your marketplace in a much more effective way than if you rely on internal data. So today, companies have a lot of software and a lot of tools to mine the internal data. But I think it's inevitable that companies and executives will have to look outside and have to look at all the external information, and that need software to analyze that in a much, much more rigorous way. I think this is one of the biggest. I think this will be one of the biggest software categories in enterprise software.
For sure. And just going back to the book, did the book help convey that message? And did you manage to how you say, preach for some of those that were interested in the data and was it?
I think to some extent. What I completely underestimated how much work it was. It was like being back in school. I worked weekends, late evenings. I felt I had homework. I had homework hanging over me for more than a year. So that was kind of painful. So if I knew how much work it was, I probably wouldn't have done it. But one thing that I maybe didn't fully internalize when I wrote the book was that it was definitely valuable for the external market, but I think it was as valuable for our employees. Because suddenly then everyone could just read that book and kind of understand the overall vision of the company. Maybe you started 14 days ago, maybe you've been in the company for 12 years, and then that book was helping to get everyone on the same page as what we are as a company and where we are heading.
Yeah, literally on the same page.
Right, and also where we are, how we fit in the overall development of our market.
Yeah, I see.
So that was actually a good value.
And another thing, you said before you didn't like the perception of goals in some way, but another thing that you managed to create as a CEO of Meltwater was the entrepreneurial school in Africa as well. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? Was that a good idea as well? Yeah,
so the aspiration was that when I was retiring, when I was tired of these startup things and so on, the plan was to set up a school for software entrepreneurs. But then a friend of mine, he's much older than me, so he's in the late 70s now. Late 70s. When I told him about my idea down the road, he was said, "No, Jørn, you have to do it now." Because his perspective was that he's so old that he just thinks about what he has left to do in his life. And he told me like, "Jørn, you never know. Tomorrow you could be hit by a truck.
Never delay things."
And then it's all over.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, oh my God, that's right. I have to do this now. So in January 2007, I announced to the whole company that we're going to set up a school for software entrepreneurs in Africa 1 year from now. Because I realized that the best way to hold myself accountable is to announce it.
Yeah.
So when I did that, then it was on. So then we had to do it. So February 2008, we proudly cut the ribbon. We set up a school for software entrepreneurs in Ghana. It was based on, I'd never been to Africa before I set up the school, but we did some desk research, and then we bought airline tickets, traveled around Africa to check out the markets. We went to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, and I think it was Zambia. So those are shortlisted. And after more than 200 interviews with entrepreneurs, NGOs, schools, and startups, we landed on Ghana. So the school is in Ghana now. We have now a global, we have a Pan-African footprint. We have an incubator in Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and we're also about to set up in Abidjan in Ivory Coast.
Oh, very nice. One last question. We are soon running out of time. What do you think? What kind of problems will technology solve in the next 5 years?
What they will solve? I'm not sure. I think technology also introduces a lot of problems.
That will be my next question.
Yeah. What they will solve? I think, in my industry, it's pretty obvious that technology can help you to process enormous amount of data at a time that a human cannot do. So to understand a large amount of data, analyze a large amount of data, and help us make better decisions, clearly. That's clearly the case. I think the drone development is super interesting.
Yeah, so do I.
5 years, I don't believe in self-driving cars. I don't think self-driving cars is going to come as soon as people predict. I think
Even
they will
though
take
coming
much
from Silicon Valley, where you see them actually in the streets, but
yeah, I don't think self-driving cars is really about technology. It's more about legislation and city planning and making sure
and
that the
adoption
roads.
from users and things.
I think adoption of users may be quick, but I think it's more of a city planning kind of issue.
Yeah.
So it's not technologists. At the end of the day, they will determine when and how self-driving cars will come. I think it will be cities like Copenhagen and other cities. They say, like, okay, now we're going to have it, and we dedicate these lanes for self-driving cars.
Yeah. And then you can answer the question is, what kind of problems do you think the technology will create within the next 5 years?
Technology
Then
problems.
I said, yeah, the problems, what do you think? Do
I
you
think-
create some of the
I
problems?
think I have always been a technology optimist. I always believe strongly in technology being a force for good. I think over the last 24 months, for the first time I paused.
Okay.
I think there are a number of technologies out there that has real potential to create problems and maybe not add positively to the world we live in. I think AI has phenomenal possibilities, can help us cure cancer, can help us feed the planet, but I also think it has lots of very dangerous and challenging issues ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I think the whole Cambridge Analytica space and the whole privacy issue is probably one of the biggest concerns I have overall.
And I think a lot of us share those concerns as well. I'm just quickly going to ask if any from the audience would like to ask Jørn a question. If there's anybody there, we can pass on the mic. Otherwise, we have one in, you can see it up on the screen. Can you see it, Jørn? I'm not sure that did I get the question?
Okay, so it's basically, what employee reactions to AI? I'm thinking, like, the person that asked this question, if you're in the room, are you talking about, like, employees being afraid of losing their jobs or having to change how they work? Is the person here? Are you
Pose the question and left.
Which be, all right.
Anyway.
Employee reactions to AI coming into the workplace.
I think people in general
middle management usually doesn't like any change at all.
I think it depends on what kind of companies we're talking about. So I think a lot of the younger companies, they're excited about it. They look at it as an effective tool to make it work faster, more efficient, and so on. But I think if AI is used in a very disruptive way in more traditional businesses, I think people are a little more pushing back. But I also think that it's very challenging if you come to a position where you make decisions based on AI and say, yeah, you can justify it, except the machine told us, the machine told us to promote you or to give you a better salary, then I think we lost something.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the AI has a very challenging proposition. AI has lots of advantages, but AI is typically also biased. It's actually very, very hard to design an AI system that is not biased. And if you then are going to have somebody that makes decisions based on the AI support, you need to be pretty knowledgeable of what's going on. I think one of the most important qualities and qualifications of senior leaders going forward is actually to challenge the AI, because otherwise there will be no value-added managers. They're sort of, oh, because of the AI told us to. Then what value do you really add? So. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's an important actually qualification and quality that leaders need to have.
When I make a lot of comparisons, there's a lot of questions up here at events like this for raising money and getting to know investors. And I make a lot of comparisons between dating. This is like, how do I know which girl's right for you? I don't know. You got to go out and then with AI also it's a little bit like saying, well, dad says so, But yeah, I say so because I'm dad. That works until kids are about this tall, and then you have to explain why.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, you guys are both very personable mensch, easy to talk to. This is, as you said before, the park stage. It's the stage where we meet each other. and where you can connect. So you have to go past them to get out. If you're interested in meeting these guys, come up, stay hello while we're switching out the mics, or catch them before they leave. All right?
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. Cheers.
you.
We get a big round.